Hello and welcome everyone to this final Guru Day session. It's the third in a series of three sessions meant to prepare us for the upcoming full moon of the Guru on July 20th. So welcome. And my name is Ganeshima, Stacy Lawson. I'm a Pillai Center teacher, and I look forward to sharing with you today a little bit about the lifetime of Dr. Pillai as Swami Ramalingam. First, just to mention about Guru Purnima. So if you've been listening into these sessions, you know that the intent here is to ground us with context and some of the base teachings, and really the spiritual preparation, the physical, mental, emotional, and energetic preparation for this beautiful and luminous full moon called the full moon of the Guru, which happens each year. Typically in the month of July. And it's focused on really the celebration and the reverence, the honoring and the thanking of all of our divine teachers, right? And those divine teachers could be guides, angels, gods and goddesses, ascended masters, the physical guru in human form, or the many gurus and prophets and sages and rishis of all of the different faith traditions that have pointed us back to the truth of who we are, the divine spark, the deeper divine self that resides within all of us and has us, really provides the breadcrumbs for us to be drawn onto the path of awakening, the path of returning to the one and to know ourselves as that. So we'll be both celebrating Dr. Pillai as an embodied teacher who has come to share this great wisdom with those of us on earth this time, and also all of the teachers that have been with us across the eons, across the ages, and across lifetimes. So today I'm going to be sharing a little bit about the first time I met Dr. Pillai, and then speaking about a lifetime that he had, his most recent previous birth as Swami Ramalingam, a notable both saint and poet from the southern part of India, from Tamil Nadu, that has been revered over over the ages, and who lived a remarkable life that often Dr. Pillai refers to in his teachings. So I think I'll just start, and then we'll share, or we'll play some of the mantras that Swami Ramalingam taught, or that Dr. Pillai taught in his life as Swami Ramalingam, related to the effulgent body of light, or what he called the deathless or immortal body, Param Jyoti. Okay, so I think just to start, I wanted to share a little story about my first meeting with Dr. Pillai over 20 years ago now. And I had been living a life as an executive, founder, entrepreneur, technology person. And I was sitting in the boardroom one day in a board meeting, and I kept seeing this sort of endless cascade of quarter ends and bigger and bigger numbers putting on the financial statements. And I thought, wow, this is not the life that I came in for. And I thought, wow, I think I need to quit this job. And then in literally a split second, I thought, oh, wow, I need to end my relationship too. I was like, oh goodness, I need to move from the house that I'm living in. It was one of those intuitive knowings that something was opening up that was different, more meaningful, and deeper than what I was doing at that time. So within a month or two, I had done all of those things. I had left the job, I had left the relationship, kind of cleared the slates for what was coming next. And I decided that I would go to India, that I would take a trip, a couple of months just on my own pilgrimage, traveling alone through India as I'd never been before. And as I booked my flights, I didn't know where I was going. So I just sort of, booked a few things from here to there. And the night before or actually just a couple of days before I was meant to leave for India, I got an email, not sure how I got on the list. And this Indian Swami, Dr. Pillai, who was called Dattatreya Shiva Baba at the time, was doing a meditation session at the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco, just a few blocks from my home. And so I thought, well, that's a nice way to start my little trip. So I went to the session, and the moment I walked in the doors of the auditorium, before I'd even laid eyes on him, all of my intuitive senses went on high alert. Wow, something is interesting is happening here. I opened the doors of the auditorium. I arrived a little late, so they were already started. And I saw Dr. Pillai, and I thought, oh my, I've never seen you before, but I've known you for an eternity. It was an immediate recognition. And I sat down and did the meditation. And as he was leading the meditation, I thought, wow, I've done this meditation thousands of times, maybe tens of thousands of times, but I'd never done it in this lifetime. And at the end of the session, the woman who was hosting it, Padma, many of you know her, she said, Dr. Pillai is having his birthday celebration in India, in this place, from this date to this date. And those were the exact, I was literally flying into that place the night before and flying out of that place the night after those dates. I was somehow, miraculously, spontaneously, I had organized my flights, not knowing that that was the exact place I needed to be at that time. And during that first trip to India, Dr. Pillai was teaching something called the light body. And I had never heard of this before. I'd never had any, Eastern teachings. I grew up Christian, a great love for Jesus. I totally adore him. And Eastern mysticism had always been intriguing to me, and something that I felt was very, very near and dear to my heart, but I hadn't actually ever experienced it directly. And Dr. Pillai was teaching about the immortal body, the effulgent light of grace light. And as soon as he started speaking about it, while I was sitting on my cushion in India for the first time, listening to this beautiful enlightened master, I thought, oh my, that's what we're all here to do. It was just as clear to me then as it is today, that this is the birthright of humanity. This is the evolution of humankind. It's yet to be seen when we choose to step into that. But in terms of the actual next evolutionary step of humanity, right, it's moving not just into enlightenment of the mind, but a full, beautiful enlightenment of our body, mind, and soul, the eternal self. And Dr. Pillai taught it so beautifully and so compellingly that in the middle of that session, we were doing a deep meditation using the mantra that we'll be talking about here in a little bit. And I had this spontaneous past life memory of actually being with him, with Dr. Pillai, in his life as Swami Ramalingam. I didn't know any of the history at that point. I didn't have any of the cultural knowledge or context, but I had a very powerful memory, direct vision of that lifetime and he as Swami Ramalingam. As it turns out, what I've come to know since then, that he has shared with me and that has come in the nadis and that I have remembered as well, is that I was actually Dr. Pillai's sister in that life. And so I'm so pleased to be able to share with you a little bit about Swami Ramalingam's life and how profound it was, and what a powerful life of service that he led, and that now he also carries with him as Dr. Pillai in his birth. So I'll just move now into Swami Ramalingam's life. So he was born in the early 1800s, and he came in as a divine child. So when he was about 5 months old, his parents took him to the Chidambaram Natharaj temple. I don't know if any of you have been there before. It is one of the most powerful, magical, really intense temple sites in southern India, in the town of Chidambaram. The dancing Nataraj is there in the temple. And they took baby Swami Ramalingam to the temple. And at age 5 months, he had an experience of delight. So he, as that young child, actually recognized the Nataraj and remembers that experience, remembered in his adult life, and said that was the moment where the first descent of the grace light came into his physical body at 5 months old. As he grew up, he was the youngest of 5 kids. And he didn't really care much for any kind of formal schooling. So, he would often sneak away to the temple, and his father died fairly young. So the mother supporting the family, the brothers and sisters all sort of tried to get each other to do their schoolwork, and his oldest brother kept basically not only encouraging but also chastising him for not going to school. And Swami Ramalingam at that point, he was like, I don't need to learn in that way. I will learn all there is to know from the divine that is untaught. And so he refused to do his schoolwork, but instead would go to the temple almost every day. And so his brother decided that in order to discipline him and to get him to go to school, he ordered that young Ramalingam didn't get dinner, didn't actually get any food. And yet it didn't deter Ramalingam, because he would call on the goddess and ask for food, and the goddess would feed him. Right? So as he got older and started doing discourse in the temple and sharing teachings, he was seen immediately as a fully enlightened saint and as someone who carried great light within him. And he became known throughout both Tamil Nadu and southern India, as well as all throughout India. He wrote over 8,000 lines of verse, beautiful Tamil poetry, describing his sublime experience with Lord Shiva, and then ultimately just the grace light, the formless effulgent essence of the divine. And his primary teachings were really threefold. One was he wanted to end the caste system in India, so he did a lot of work and created a guild and put together teachings and sort of efforts to end the caste system. Second, and I would say even more important, was his deep, deep, deep desire to feed people. And so to this day, there are groups related to the Ramalingam temple and ashram that have done continuous feeding since the time he was alive, and are welcome all people of all castes, and have fed millions and millions of people in southern India. And then third, his teachings around the immortal body, the light body, and the grace light. So Ramalingam had a mantra that he spread widely, that he worked with, and it is called a Rupurum Jyoti. A Rupurum Jyoti means the vast effulgent light of grace, the grace light. And so the mantra went like this: Arut Perum Jyoti, Arut Perum Jyoti, Tani Perum Karune, Arut Perum Jyoti, Arut Perum Jyoti, Arut Perum Jyoti, Tani Perum Karune, Arut Perum Jyoti, Arut Perum Jyoti, Arut Perum Jyoti, Tani Perum Karune, Arut Perum Jyoti. And it basically translates as the vast grace light, shower your compassion and mercy upon me, O vast grace light. And the beautiful teachings were that we are all a vast grace light, and that the grace of the divine, the mercy and compassion of the divine would descend into the body, mind, and soul, and activate fully this immortal body of light within us. And at the time that Swami Ramalingam was alive, he spread this teaching around the grace light, but he said, I came and I opened up my shop, but no one bought the goods. And so he decided that it wasn't yet exactly time on the earth for his students or a broader set of people to be ready to receive and embody the grace light, to become immortal bodies of light. And so he said, since I opened up shop and no one came to buy my wares, I'm going to close my shop and I'll come back at a future time when the earth is ready. And so he said, I'm going to be turning my body into light, but I will return. So in 1874, after teaching all of his students and devotees to meditate on the light in the lamp that was in his room, he would set it outside the door and have them take the light and meditate with that light. He said, I'm going to be going into my room. I'm going to close the door. And if you open the door, I won't be there. So he, in January of 1874, went into his room, closed the door, and proceeded to turn his body into light. And this had been, the British were occupying India at that time, and Swami Ramalingam's effulgent body had been noted by the British authorities. In fact, Radha, do you have the photo of Swami Ramalingam that we can show folks? So he actually, prior to going into his room for the final ascension, he started getting very, very bright. And so he would wrap himself in this white cloth and clasp his hands in front of him. He said, in order to hold the energy in the physical form, because if he didn't hold that stance, he would actually start to dissolve into light. And there were experiences where folks would photograph him, and in the photographs, he would appear simply as a effulgent being full of light. You can see another of the images here. With him in meditation, clasping his hands like that, and you can see the crown of light coming out of his head. So these images of Swami Ramalingam, here's another beautiful one. You'll see them if you've traveled throughout southern India. He's such a renowned and beloved figure that you'll see these images on billboards and around the temple areas and so forth, especially in Vadalur, where he had his ashram and temple. So these beautiful, beautiful images. I think there's actually one more with Dr. Pillai at the Swami Ramalingam temple, where in this temple there are no deities, just what's worshipped here is simply the effulgent grace light. And it's a light that has been perpetually burning, actually behind those doors, since the time that Swami Ramalingam was alive. They have kept it burning, oil in that lamp, for all these years since then. Thank you. So, as I alluded to, in 1874, Swami Ramalingam went into his room, closed the door, and the government authorities had been tracking and actually his life and his kind of early ascension process, where he was starting to turn the body into light, and there were these miracles of him, not showing up in the photographs, and appearing in multiple places at the same time, and feeding people in magical ways. they had been documenting that in the public record. And so as he went into his room and the devotees closed the door, and ultimately the government authorities came and insisted that the door be opened to see what was inside. And all they found was an empty room. So that was an example in our modern, relatively modern day of a documented case of a deeply mystical and spiritual person embracing the effulgent light and actually having the experience, having the deep process. I actually meant to bring, there's 2 volumes of Swami Ramalingam's books about his process and practice for attaining the immortal body of light. And I find it so beautiful that in fact this story is documented now in the public record, not as a fairy tale, not as a mystical story, but actually as something that was accounted for and seen by all of the people of his day as real. So, as I mentioned, Dr. Pillai in that birth said, well, now's not the time, but I will incarnate again. And in my next incarnation, there will be those that are ready to experience this vast effulgent light and ready to work on or attain, ready to receive the grace, right? Because it's not something we can do so much as something we surrender into to receive the grace and the mercy of the divine in that immortal body of light. So I think that's all that we'll share today in preparation for the upcoming full moon of the Guru. But we will end this, we'll transition now into the Grace Light chant, the Parum Jyoti chant. And you can stay on for as long as you like to experience that beautiful, beautiful mantra and to receive the mercy of the divine and the light within you to be awakened.